What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Thank you for stopping in. If you are new here, hit the subscribe button down below. I'd love to have you. Before you head out, hit the thumbs up button. I greatly appreciate it. And if you have time, leave me a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. So today, we have something that is a little different as far as a video. It's not just any one knife. This is a group of knives. Now the extensive research that I went through to make this video. Sure, the editing isn't gonna be good. None of that type of shit is gonna be any good. But the testing that I performed on each one of these knives, it took me quite a while to do all of the testing, and on top of that, writing down every little thing I could find about each knife. And you might be saying, that took you that long on these four knives. Well, no, it didn't. This was just a representation of a couple, but I do have some button locks. I don't have every single button lock ever made, and I've sold a few recently, actually. But I do have quite a few. And that is why the testing took so long. Let's see if I can get them all in frame here. So I do have some of these are all production knives. I have some higher productions, some higher end productions. You got the Mordax here, Malibu, the Hogue EX01, and then, some around the $100 mark and then under. And I went through and I literally tested every single one of these knives. You can pause it there to kind of see my list. And the results are pretty profound, actually. Some of the ones you thought for sure would pass, failed. And some of the ones you thought for sure would fail, passed. Now, as much as I could, I ran the same test for each knife. Now, on the same piece of wood, on the corner of a piece of lumber. I only nicked myself once. So, do not try that. Do not try this at home. Basically, I am a professional. But there's your disclosure. So we can go right down the line. I didn't really have an order of how I wanted to do this, but we can just go through the order. We're not going to go over materials or any of that stuff. We're going to go over the company, the name of the knife, and what happened. And in order to keep this under my 30-minute normal video, we'll have to kind of move quickly, but I still would like to give, information about each one in the testing. So we'll start off with the one that kind of started all of this, the Vosteed Valkyrie. And I think this knife is getting way too much blame. Little does everyone know, since the beginning, these knives have been prone to failure, as far as I can tell. Button lock, plunge lock knives. And it wasn't something that was real prevalent initially, because the only thing that was really out was you had a couple ProTechs, which most people aren't bashing their ProTechs, on the spine of their knife on a piece of wood. They just wasn't. And then you had Hogue with a couple, and then you started seeing Kaiser, CJRB, Civivi start flooding the market with these knives. Now, some of these are as simple as I can take this knife and it's going to fail, pretty much. See? So the ones that failed off the first hit, I performed the test 3 more times, and if it failed on each initial first test, I moved on because it was failing. The ones who passed each initial test definitely passed. Did I feel good about smashing the spine of the knife on a piece of lumber? I got more and more used to it as I did it for testing purposes. One thing I did go through, and I made sure all the pivots were tight. I made sure all the hardware was tight. I made sure the blades were as centered as possible. I made sure the knives were locked up. In between each test, I would make sure there was no wiggle or play. I made sure the action was still right. And as far as I can tell, everything stayed the same with each knife. There was no blade play. Pivots were tight afterwards. So everything stayed the same. So we'll go over it. The Vosteed Valkyrie failed the first test, the second test, and the third test all on the first try. And as you can see there, 1, 1, and 1, which means they failed the test the first time, the second time, and the third time on each first try. Now, to get into it a little bit, each test consisted of whacking the back of the knife at the top, then near the spine, like directly behind the plunge, which is where most of these that failed experienced failure. Some were able to fail back in here, but it was less prevalent in some. And then I also got some to fail at a diagonal motion into the back of the spine. So hitting something like this on the side of the knife. So the Vosteed Valkyrie did fail the testing. The Vosteed Raccoon failed the testing. 1, 1, and 1. It did not pass any of the tests or go beyond 1 try on any one of the tests. So there is your 2 Vosteeds, the Raccoon and the Valkyrie. Both failed the test. And now I had a couple failures right in a row. Boom, boom, boom. Next up to fail was this guy, the Civivi Conspirator. Now, this one lasted quite a bit, actually. I was able to, I think on the 6th one, get this one to fail. And it actually surprised me because I thought it was going to hold up. Like I said, the ones I thought might hold up didn't. And the ones I thought might fail passed on some. Now, this one failed on the 6th attempt, and then I tried it a few more times, and then it continued to fail once I figured out this one did not like up closer to the plunge at an angle. That's when I realized at an angle on the back of the spine, that puts a lot more pressure on that plunge. As you can see, there's no blade play, no wiggle. Everything is good. Now, there's no rhyme or reason. Some are coated, some are stonewashed, some are satin. I cannot for the life of me right now figure out what it is. Now, I've come to some conclusions as to maybe why. What we can do here is the cogent. And where'd he go? Where'd he go? Oh, he's right here. Okay. The cogent, the Chevalier, and the button lock Elementum all passed. And these were 2, 2, 3, and 4. After getting the first Civivi to fail, I expected all of these to fail with the exception of the Elementum button lock. I wasn't sure about him. But I could not get these two to fail. I actually performed the test a little beyond normal on these two because I wondered why did the fourth button lock, which would be the conspirator, fail after they had already created 1, 2, 3. I just couldn't figure that part out. These ones, as I said, no blade play, everything is fine. They passed with flying colors actually, and I bashed these pretty good on the spine of the knife, and these all passed, these 3 with flying colors. As you can see here, fail, 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 pass, 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 and then getting through all of the Civivis and Vasteeds took me to CJRBs. And this is where I thought for sure both of these would fail. And to my surprise, the CJRB Pyrite passed, and their first attempt, the White Mountain Knives exclusive Feldspar, passed. They did pass with flying colors. I smacked these pretty good. Now, if they were the first 5 or so, I did them a little lighter. And as they passed, I put a little more into the last 5 attempts at different angles, at more speed at which I would hit the back of them. And so the ones who did pass truly passed the testing that I performed. So, and this is not scientific. This isn't, a hunt with 100% certainty. This is just with the models that I have and that I was able to perform the test on. I just recently sold my other Malibu, and I kind of wish I would have done this testing beforehand to see if the black on black Warncliffe were to pass or fail as well. But I did have a second ProTech to test, and we will get there momentarily. But the CJRB Feldspar and the Pyrite both passed with flying colors. So next up, that took care of Civivi, CJRB, and Vasteed. Next up was Kaiser's line of button locks. So here you have the Beglighter XL, the Cormorant, the Swayback, and the original. So I thought for sure this one would pass, fail, fail, pass. Well, fail, pass, pass, fail. The Beglighter failed right away. The first smack, as it did there. I do not have any B-roll because I do not know really how to do that. But I am not, I am not lying when I say one failed, and I'm not lying when I say one passed, as concerns my testing. The most surprising of the bunch, and I don't quite know what the difference is here, that this is Kaiser's first button lock, the Cormorant. This one passed, and I mean it passed. I smashed the hell out of this, and it did not fail. And that's when I started kind of examining, the mechanics and kind of trying to figure out why some are failing and others aren't. One conclusion I came to was that some of them, as far as their plunge, they stick out a little further into the tang, and I think that really helps. The ones that have a really shallow lockup, so when that plunge comes over into the tang, it sits under the tang of the knife. Well, the ones that stick out a little further into the tang, those seem to hold up a little better. Didn't matter if it was coated, uncoated, satin, whatever. Then ones with a little thicker plunge lock, I noticed, seem to hold up a little better. The Kaiser original failed instantly. First whack, second whack, third whack, all three tests, it failed. And it was no question easy. Now, I did go through all of these before starting the testing and made sure that I couldn't break it by just putting mere pressure on it, and they all passed that way. I would hold them. I was on the button there. I would hold them like this and push as hard as I could, and then I would hold them like this and push as hard as I could. They all passed that test. So that's first and foremost. They weren't just unlocking under mere pressure. The swayback passed, and it passed. It did very well in the testing. And this is a knife I thought for sure was going to fail, and it did not. It did very well through the testing. No blade play, no rock. Everything went fine with the knife. The Cormorant passed with flying colors, and the bag lighter failed miserably. So easily, it's just unbelievable how easy. You know, I'm not even barely touching the back. Some of them took a lot more than that to fail. The bag lighter XL was probably the second or third easiest to get to fail. The Cormorant and the swayback performed excellent. So as you can see there, the Pyrite passed, the Feldspar passed. Now we're getting to the Hogue. The Hogue is a brute. This is what I'm talking about, where that plunge is very nice, very thick, and it also sticks halfway into the tang of the knife, which provides this with very solid lockup. It didn't matter which way I hit this, how hard I hit this knife didn't even budge. It actually put indentations into the wood that I was using, and it just performed excellent. And almost the ones that pass, you can just almost hear how strong the lockup is. The ones that fail, you can just tell they're going to fail as soon as you give it that first one. I don't know. It's very odd. So the Hogue passed 10 out of 10. Then we get to the Malibu. The one you would think, no question, this is going to pass, right? No. This knife failed on the first attempt. Let's see if I can... So as you can see, this knife is locked up, okay? And it fails. It takes a little bit, but it does fail. A little more than, like, say, the Vasteed or the bag lighter, but nonetheless, it does fail. I would say the champions of this test are right here. And don't ask me why the Mordax passed and the Malibu didn't. This is definitely, if you're looking for a strong button lock, the Hogue EX01, without question, is the one I would tell you to go with. If you must have a fidgety button lock, hard use knife, the Hogue EX01 is definitely where I would go. The Mordax performed awesome. I thought for sure. I did some small testing that I sent to the my YouTube brothers, basically, and Rochambeau. Check him out. He threw in some of my small testing that I did, and the Mordax passed that initial testing, and I ran the testing again, and then I ran it again. So all these knives have been through quite a bit of testing, and each time you know, they showed their true colors. They passed and failed as they did in each test I performed. So the ones that failed always failed. The ones that passed always passed. There wasn't one that passed, and then failed for some reason. The ones that passed, they passed all the tests and they did well. So what's the conclusion from all this? I have no idea. The only thing I got closer to was that the further the plunge is in under the tang, that seemed to help a little bit. And then the thicker the plunge lock, the better. This is an outstanding example of how the plunge should be. If you look at this plunge, and then let's just pick on the Vasteed a little bit more. If you look at the lighting, is going to be horrible. Let's see here. That ain't going to be a good example. But if you look at the plunge of this Hogue, it is probably at least 1.5 times thicker than some of these other button locks. Now, that doesn't always hold true though. Like these, like this guy here and some of the Civivis have a very small plunge and they passed. But ones that had small plunges, like the Vosteeds, the one Civivi, a couple of the Kaisers, they all failed. So if you have any input, go ahead and leave it down below. But that is my conclusion, my testing. I think that companies who are going to be designing button locks need to go back to the drawing board. Now, yes, they're not supposed to be hard use knives, no. But, you know, we're almost, you know, I hate to pick on these companies, but we're almost making excuses for them. Because there are companies who are making these knives and they're not failing. Hogue, CJRB, Civivi got 3 out of the 4. Kaiser is 50-50. ProTech 50-50. So it can be done. So I don't want to hear that, you know, that's not what they're meant for. You know, the testing shows 3, 4, 5, 6 passed, or 6 failed, I'm sorry. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 passed. So 9 against 6 in a sense. So we're almost making excuses for the ones that failed. So leave it down below. Let me know what you think. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. We had a lot to cover. I will show up the stats one more time. That way you guys can get a look at kind of what I came to the conclusion on. And I also wrote down on a separate page that, you know, it was coated, stone washed, satin. Did it have a smaller plunge, thicker plunge, you know, so on and so forth. But if you made it through the whole thing, give me a thumbs up. Give yourself a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And if you're still here and you're not subscribed and you see that little subscribe button down there, go ahead and click that thing. Otherwise, guys, have a safe night. Have a good night. And I will catch you later.